Clinical Oncology Part 4 Cancer Treatment and Therapies by Clinical SWOT. Today's contents are surgical management of primary tumors, regional lymph node basin, and distant metastasis. The second is chemotherapy and radiotherapy. The third is hormonal, targeted, immuno, and genetic therapy. The first is surgical management of primary tumors. Patients in whom the primary tumors is not resectable with negative surgical margins, they are considered to be inoperable, and the operability of the primary tumors is best determined before the surgery with the appropriate imaging studies that define the extent of local regional disease. The disease involving multiple distant metastases are usually not curable. Therefore, patients who are at high risk of having distant metastases should undergo staging workup before the surgery for the primary tumor. On occasionally, primary tumors are resected in these patients for palliative reasons, such as improving quality of life by alleviating pain, infection, or bleeding. The uniform goal for all successful oncologic operation is achieving the widely negative margins. Then there is surgical management of regional lymph node basin. Most neoplasms have ability to metastasize via lymphatics. Therefore, most oncologic operations have been designed to remove the primary tumor and the draining lymph node en bloc. This type of operative procedure is usually undertaken when lymph nodes draining the primary tumor site lie adjacent to the tumor bed, as in the case of colorectal and gastric cancer. But for the tumors in which regional lymph node basin is not immediately adjacent to the tumor, such as in melanomas, lymph node surgery can be performed through a separate incision. Unlike in most carcinomas, soft tissue sarcoma rarely metastasizes to the lymph nodes. Therefore, lymph node surgery is not usually recommended in the case of soft tissue sarcomas. Continuing, it is generally accepted that lymphadenectomy is likely to minimize the risk of regional recurrence in most cancer. So, regarding to this, there are two opposing views. The first is Halsted view, and the second is namely opposing view, which is regarding to the role of lymphadenectomy. So in the Halsted view mainly states that lymphadenectomy is important for staging and survival, but the opposing view counters that the staging is systemic at inception and that lymphadenectomy, although useful for the staging, does not affect the survival. The first node to receive the drainage from the tumor site is termed the sentinel node. So the sentinel lymph node is the first node to receive the drainage, and it is most likely or most importantly contains the metastasis. So for this, lymphatic mapping is done and the sentinel lymph node biopsy specimen is used to identify and remove the lymph node that is most likely to contain the metastasis in invasive fashion. So there are two criteria for lymphatic mapping. The first is sentinel lymph node identification rate and the second is false negative rate. The first sentinel lymph node identification rate is proportion of the patient in whom the sentinel lymph node was identified and removed among all patients undergoing an attempted sentinel lymph node biopsy specimen. And the second is false negative biopsy specimen, which results may be due to identifying the wrong node or to missing the sentinel lymph node, that is due to surgical errors, or they may be due to the cancer cells establishing metastasis not in the first node but in the second node, also the second echelon node. Alternatively, false negative biopsy specimens result may be due to inadequate histologic evaluations of the lymph node. Then we have surgical management of distant metastasis. The treatment of the patient with distant metastasis depends on the number of sites of the metastasis. The tumor has metastasized to the number of sites, the cancer time of the tumor, the rate of tumor growth, and the previous treatments delivered to that patient and responses to those treatments by the patient. Patients who do have synchronous metastasis, that is metastasis diagnosed at the initial cancer diagnosis, do worse after mastectomy. Then patients who develop metachronous metastasis, that is metastasis diagnosed after the disease-free interval. In curative surgery for distant metastasis, the goal is to resect the metastasis with negative margins. In patient with hepatic metastasis that is unresectable because their location near the intrahepatic vessels, which precludes the margin negative resection or because they are multifocal or hepatic function is inadequate. In these cases, tumor ablation with cryotherapy or radiofrequency ablation is an alternative. So the patient who have hepatic metastasis, they have unresectable tumor if the because if the tumor is near the intrahepatic blood vessels, it may compromise the main function of the liver, or it may compromise the functional liver. So in these cases with hepatic metastasis tumor, the resection is not possible. Then we have chemotherapy. The main goal of the chemotherapy is to decrease the tumor burden, so there is prolonged survival. Chemotherapy is administered to the patient who are high risk for distant recurrence. So there are mainly two types of chemotherapy. There is preoperative and postoperative, also known as neoadjuvant chemotherapy and adjuvant chemotherapy respectively. So preoperative chemotherapy has mainly three advantages. The first is the preoperative regression of the tumor, means when the patient is given chemotherapy regimen preoperatively, so it mainly regresses the tumor and facilitates the resection of the tumor that were initially inoperable. The second advantage of the preoperative chemotherapy is the treatment of micrometastasis without the delay of postoperative recovery. And the third advantage is the ability to assess the cancer's response to the treatment. And we have principle of chemotherapy. What is the main principle of chemotherapy around which the chemotherapy regimen revolves? Is chemotherapy mainly destroys the cells by first order kinetics, which means that with the administration of the drug, a constant percentage of cells is killed, not a constant number of cells. Then we have anti-cancer agents. There are mainly four types of agents, of which the first is alkylating agents. Alkylating agents are cell cycle non-specific agents. They act by cross-linking the two DNA strands or two DNA helix, or it can damage or it can lead to direct damage of the DNA. These alkylating agents are nitrosoureas, classic alkylators, or any other DNA binding agents. Then we have anti-tumor antibiotics. The anti-tumor antibiotics are the products of fermentation of microbial organisms. They are also cell cycle non-specific, and the anti-tumor antibiotics damage the cell by interfering with DNA or RNA synthesis. Then we have antimetabolites, which are cell cycle specific. They mainly act during the S phase of the cycle, but they have very little effect during the G0 phase of the cell cycle. They mainly interfere in the normal synthesis of nucleic acid by substituting purines or pyrimidines in the metabolic pathway, so they inhibit the critical enzymes in the nucleic acid synthesis. The antimetabolites include folate antagonist, purine antagonist, and pyrimidine antagonist. Then the last class is plant alkaloids. Plant alkaloids are mainly derived from the plants such as periwinkle plant, Vinca rosea, or a root of American mandrake. Podophyllum peltatum is also used, which yields us etoposide or podophyllatoxin. Vinca alkaloids affect the cells by binding to the tubulin in the S phase, and the epipodophyllatoxins, that is etoposide, act to inhibit the DNA enzyme called topoisomerase II by stabilizing the DNA topoisomerase II complex. This results in the inability to synthesize DNA, and thus the cell cycle is stopped in the G1 phase. Then we have combination chemotherapy. Combination chemotherapy mainly provides greater efficacy than single agent therapy by three mechanisms. Firstly, it provides maximum cell kill within the range of toxicity that is tolerated by the host. The second is it offers a broad range of coverage of resistant cell lines in a heterogeneous population. And the third is it prevents or delays the emergence of the drug resistant cell lines. Drugs with different mechanisms of action are combined to allow additive and synergistic effects. Means if any two drugs are combined, they give a synergistic effect or additive effect than if the same drug is used in a single agent therapy. Combining a cell cycle specific and cell cycle non-specific agents may be advantageous than using the single drug, or if cell cycle specific or single cell cycle non-specific. Then we have drug toxicity. Tumors are more susceptible than normal tissue to the chemotherapeutic agents. Why? Because they have a higher proportion of dividing cells. So the chemotherapeutic drugs mainly target the high proportion of dividing cells or highly or fastly dividing cells. When a patient is given with the chemotherapeutic agents, there are some toxic effects such as bone marrow suppression, stomatitis, ulceration of GI tract, and alopecia. Now, talking about administration of chemotherapy, we can administer chemotherapeutic agents via IV, IM, subcutaneous, or peroral. Systematic administration treats micrometastasis at widespread sites and prevents systemic recurrence, whereas in the case of regional administration, it minimizes the systemic toxicity while enhancing the target organ delivery. In the case of regional administration of chemotherapy, intrahepatic delivery of chemotherapy for hepatic cancer or metastatic colorectal cancer using a hepatic artery infusion pump or limb perfusion for extremity melanoma. So these are the types of regional administration. Then we have radiation therapy. What is radiation therapy? Radiation therapy and how it is given. Radiation therapy is mainly a high energy photons delivered onto the body that can be gamma rays, X rays, or charged particles like electrons. X rays mainly transfers the tissue, depositing the maximum dose beneath the surface and thus spare the skin. Electrons are used to treat the superficial skin lesions or superficial tumors or surgical beds to depth of 5 centimeters. Radiation deposition results in DNA damage, which manifests as single or double stranded breaks. The most important factor is these radiation are susceptible to cellular oxygen. That is, hypoxic cells are significantly less radiosensitive than irradiated cells. The extent of DNA damage from indirectly ionizing radiation is dependent on the phase of the cell cycle. The most radiosensitive phases are G2 and M. The delivery of the radiation is divided in the divided doses, a concept referred to as fractionation, allows the surviving of G1 and S phase to progress to more sensitive phases, a process known as reassortment. Several chemicals are modified and can also give the effects of ionizing radiation, such as these include hypoxic cell sensitizers like metronidazole and misonidazole, which mimic the oxygen and increase the cell kill of hypoxic cells. The second category of radiation sensitizers are thymidine analogs, iododeoxyuridine and bromodioxyuridine. Now the planning of radiotherapy. So radiation therapy is delivered in the homogeneous dose to a well-defined region that includes tumor or surrounding tissue at risk. The first step is firstly define the target to be irradiated. Then the surgeon should evaluate the alternative treatment and simulate it or rehearse it. And the third is immobilization devices should be placed and markings or tattoos should be drawn on the patient skin, so we should ensure that daily treatment is given in the same way and at the same site. Radiation therapy may be used as palliation in certain patients with metastatic disease, primarily in the bone metastasis patient. In these cases, radiation is recommended for the symptomatic metastasis only. However, in the lytic metastasis in the weight-bearing bones such as femur, tibia, and humerus, they are also considered for irradiation. Preoperative radiation therapy has several advantages. Mainly, it minimizes the seeding of the tumor during surgery and allows for smaller treatment fields because the operative bed has not been contaminated with tumor cells. The disadvantages of pre-operative therapy are an increased risk for post-operative wound healing. If the radiation therapy is given post-operatively, it is usually given 3 to 4 weeks after surgery to allow the wound healing. The disadvantages of post-operative radiation therapy are that the volume of the normal tissue requiring the irradiation may be larger owing to surgical contamination of the tissue planes, and that the tumor may be less sensitive to the radiation owing to poor oxygenation. The another mode of post-operative radiation therapy is brachytherapy. The radiation source may be cesium, gold, iridium, or radium. Brachytherapy is administered via temporary or permanent delivery implants such as needles, seeds, or catheters. Brachytherapy has the disadvantage of leaving scars at the catheter insertion site. The advantage of the patient convenience owing to the shorter treatment duration has made intracavitary treatment approaches popular for the treatment of breast cancer. So the disadvantage is it leaves the scar at the catheter site, and the advantage is it is a shorter duration treatment. Another short delivery approach is intraoperative radiotherapy, that is IORT. It is also used in combination with external beam therapy. Now, what is external beam therapy? It is a proton therapy that employs a beam of protons as a means of delivery radiation to the tumor. In contrast to photons, which deposit energy cautiously, continuously during the passage through the tissues, protons deposit a large amount of their energy near the end of the path, also known as Bragg peak. Now we have hormonal therapy. Currently, hormonal anti-cancer agents include androgens, anti-androgens, anti-estrogens, estrogens, glucocorticoids, gonadotropin inhibitors, progestins, aromatase inhibitors, and somatostatin analogs. Hormones or hormone-like agents can be administered to inhibit the tumor growth by blocking or antagonizing the naturally occurring substance such as with estrogen antagonist tamoxifen. Now, aromatase inhibitors, for example, block the peripheral conversion of the endogenous androgens to estrogens in post-menopausal women. Then we have targeted therapy. Targeted therapy usually are directed at processes involved in tumor growth rather than directly targeting the tumor cells. So it mainly inhibits the tumor growth. How the tumor is growing, it inhibits the source of the tumor or tumor growth. The major groups of the target therapy agents are inhibitors of growth factor receptors, inhibitors of intracellular signal transduction, cell cycle inhibitors, apoptosis based therapies, and anti angiogenic compounds. Imatinib mesylate, that is Gleevec, is in treating chronic myelogenous leukemia and GI stromal tumors, and trastuzumab is used in treatment of breast cancer, and vemurafenib is used in treatment of melanoma. The main aim of the immunotherapy is to induce a potentiate inherent antitumor immunity that can destroy the cancer cells. Antitumor immunity is the ability of the immune system to recognize tumor associated antigens, present them on antigen presenting cells, and then direct the cytotoxic responses through humoral or T cell mediated immunity. Then we have non-specific immunotherapy, which stimulates the immune system as a whole through administration of bacterial antigens. And the last is antigen specific immunotherapy, which is achieved through anti-tumor vaccines. In passive immunotherapy, antibodies to specific tumor associated antigens can be produced by hybridoma technique or and then administered to the patient. Then we have genetic therapy or gene therapy. Cancer gene therapy uses a variety of strategies ranging from replacement of mutated or deleted tumor suppressor genes to enhancement of immune responses to cancer cells. An ideal vector should be administered through a non-invasive route and would transduce all of the cancer cells and none of the normal cells. One of the promising approaches to increase the number of tumor cells transduced is the use of replication competent virus like a parvovirus, a human reovirus, or vesicular stomatitis virus that transduces all of the tumor tissues or tumor cells but none of the normal cells, and then replicates within that malignant cells, and lastly lyses them and eradicates the tumor. Thank you. Stay tuned, study hard. Clinical SWOT signing off.